Welcome to the second of 3 short presentations on assessment. These are intended to get us started with assessment and to provide a bird's-eye view of the assessment process. This session provides an overview of assessment planning. Participants will have the opportunity to review the 3 key steps to assessment planning. Like with most other things, planning in assessment pays off both in efficiency and effectiveness. There are 3 main steps to assessment planning. The first step is to specify learning outcomes. Time invested in stating these outcomes as specifically as possible pays off in more focused assignments, improved testing and evaluation, and better choices in instructional strategies. When shared with students, clear learning outcomes can enhance student learning. The importance of clearly worded learning outcomes cannot be overstated. The second step is deciding how and how much data to collect. Ideally, one wants just enough data to inform decisions. Since the goal of assessment is not to just generate data, the final step is to analyze the data in order to take appropriate actions. Student learning outcomes for a program or a course state the most important things that students are intended to know or be able to do at the conclusion of the course or program. Learning outcomes need to be clear. Aim to state as specifically as possible what it is that students are intended to learn. And learning outcomes should also be stated in terms what the students should learn through this experience. That is, in the form, students should be able to, rather than stating what the instructor will do or what the curriculum is designed to do, state it in terms of what the students will be able to do. Learning outcomes are stated at varying levels depending on the organizational level to which they're attached. Course outcomes will be much more specific than college learning outcomes, which will be stated in more general terms. Taking additional time to ensure that learning outcomes are clear and appropriate can pay significant dividends for instructors. There are 2 primary types of assessment measures that can be used to collect data. Both provide useful information when used appropriately. These are usually called direct and indirect measures. Direct measures are things that are tangible or visible. Frequently, these are artifacts created through student learning experiences, such as writing samples, case studies, papers, a speech, or a research project. Some things aren't able to be captured by direct measures, for example, student opinions or perceptions. In these situations, indirect measures are used. These are proxies or substitutes for things that are difficult to capture by other means. Items such as surveys, interviews, assessments of dispositions, or supervisor evaluations can be considered indirect measures. Because the measure is indirect does not mean it's unimportant. If you want to know what student opinion is on an important curricular change, surveying them is a good thing to do. Indirect measures may be important, but because they are proxies for something, they often provide information that is less clear than that from direct measures, and therefore less convincing. For example, student engagement can be a proxy for student learning, but it's less specific than looking at artifacts students have produced. However, measuring engagement can tell us a lot about learning. This argues for the standard practice in assessment of taking multiple measures. Doing this both increases the potential clarity of the data and provides for more convincing evidence. Prior to collecting assessment data, it's important to decide two things. First, how much evidence will be collected. Too much and a data pool is created that is unlikely to be fully used. This frustrates the collectors. Ideally, one aims to collect just enough information to enable good decisions to be made and not have wasted effort through creating unused data. Secondly, the type of evidence needs to be determined in advance. Is it from the beginning, the middle, or the end of a course? Each type provides for a different analysis and answers different questions. In collecting relevant data, thoughtful choices need to be made to decide what, how much, and what kind of data to collect, and what kind of instruments to use. Interpreting the data is a critical part of the process. It is important to allow the data to speak, to lead us where that data wants us to go. However, it is important to recognize that we're looking for data-informed decisions and that there are other factors at play. As the quote notes, data are also like an assembly of facts, which aren't necessarily the same thing as truth. If facts are poorly interpreted, it can lead to the wrong conclusions. Since we want to take beneficial action, we want to take the time to interpret the data well. It's also important to have a clear purpose for the data use. Although we may discover some things along the way that we hadn't planned, clarity of purpose keeps us on track. The ability to answer the questions, why did we generate this data? And where is it leading? Are questions that will keep us on track. Because the quote notes, people need to understand why they are using data. What is the end goal? In data analysis and action, we aim for the right amount of the right kind of data at the right time. Taking appropriate action is often called closing the loop. To close the loop, we take appropriate action for improvement based on the multiple measures we've used to generate the information we have about student learning. Remember, the end of assessment is action, not information. Assessment aims to answer the question, what do we do? Not just, what do we know?